Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election. And it's the same two people that were discussing a little bit later in the text the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there? My God, there's so much going on out there, I don't even know where to start. Hello everyone, this is What's Out There, February 27th, 2018. You're listening to us on LNM Radio Network, LateNightInTheMidlands.com, LNMRadioNetwork.com. Also on 101.7. Is that right? 101.7? WCET. Columbia Talk. Oh, goodness. It's been a rough 4 days, and I'm just getting back in the swing of things here. But we've had a rough 4 days going on here that I haven't done a show. And the shootings, the school shootings, NRA, CPAC meetings, all kinds of good stuff. It seems as though that kid in Florida just can't shut up. He loves the publicity. He loves to be in front of the camera. And wherever there's a camera, he's going to be for some reason. But I see this all coming to, how would I say it? All coming to a head because this stuff, it needs, I mean, this has been coming on for a while, okay? And it all starts back with the money system. And what I really need to do is, there's a recording here. It took weeks to put together for a man to do it, and I'm going to go ahead and blast this out for you so you can get an idea of what's been happening here.
In 1944, a war-weary world convened in the Bretton Woods Conference. 44 allied nations from across the globe met to discuss the future of the new economic world. From this meeting came an arrangement to establish the US dollar, which was then the strongest currency, as the global currency, which would also be backed by gold. You can kind of think of it as an insurance policy for the financially ruined nations at the time. From the Bretton Woods Conference also came what would eventually evolve into the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. All is right with the world for a few years, but then the 1960s hit. The US gold-backed monetary system begins to cripple the American economy. The pegged fixed rate of dollar to gold first created a false demand for the US dollar, which eventually could no longer be backed in gold. Countries grew suspicious. Then we got involved in the Vietnam War. And our deficit was realized by the world in late 1971. That deficit being about $200 billion. Countries began asking for their gold, but the US simply no longer had it. What was once a nation that held 80% of the world's gold now had almost none. So the president at that time had to act, and act quickly. So the United States makes history again in 1971. On August 15, 1971, the U.S. president at that time, Richard Nixon, delivers a speech to the world.
We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
There would no longer be a gold-backed U.S. currency. World currencies now floated on the market, ending the Bretton Woods Agreement. Henry Kissinger, Nixon's Secretary of State, assists in the deal breaker. In 1973, to maintain a demand on a global scale for the US dollar, similar to that of the Woods Agreement, a deal is struck with Saudi Arabia. Oil for dollars became the new world economy. The petrodollar system is born. The petrodollar deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States is this. It takes special note of this because it's the basis of today's American foreign policy in the Middle East. For every barrel of oil purchased from Saudi Arabia from any nation, the oil would have to be purchased in US dollars only. For those who have foreign currency, they would first have to convert to US dollars before being able to purchase the oil. Every growing economy operates on oil, so they needed US dollars. But the exchange for such a lucrative deal comes at a cost that we still pay for. For Saudi Arabia to agree to the exclusive oil for dollars deal, the US promised weapons and military protection. For excess profits made from oil, Saudi Arabia would buy US debt. And that's what you have in your pocket. That Federal Reserve note is a note of debt. So in short, the United States was to protect Saudi borders, which is oil, at all costs necessary. Now for some kickers. In 1975, OPEC arrives. Multiple nations agree on the oil for dollars deal with similar US military and weapons protection exchanges. But some years after the arrangement, several nations begin to question the validity of such a deal, much like what happened with the gold for dollars deal of Bretton Woods. Nations like North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela decide to exit or not take part in the deal. This is also during a time when Russia, China, and India turned their backs on the petrodollar system. Iran's sanctions commenced in 1979. Remember Syria? They made it to a similar list in 1979 by that same US department. Terms are coined like axis of evil, a corporate mainstream media favorite. In 1980, the Rapid Deployment Joint Task Force, or RDJTF, is established, mainly to deter Russia and maintain Gulf region oil stability. In 1983, the RDJTF turns into the United States Central Command, or CENTCOM. Their responsibility, Middle East and Central Asian regions. Then comes Saddam Hussein, 9/11, and the War on Terror. In 1991, the U.S. air-ground war in Iraq begins, also known as the Gulf War. April 2000, the U.S. builds a $1 billion base in Qatar in the event of action against Iraq. But this barely rates a mention in fake stream media. On September 24th, 2000, and this is important to note, guys, Saddam Hussein announces Iraq oil exports would be exchanged for the euro, not the US dollar. The petro-euro plans are in place, and Hussein thumbs his nose at American Saudi oil deals. Now remember, that was almost exactly 1 year before the 9/11 attacks. In March of 2001, the Pentagon documents how Iraq oil fields would be carved up and outsourced to Western companies. Then comes September 2001, the 9/11 terrorist attack. Already, not everyone is convinced this is so straightforward, but the mainstream media churns into action, quickly pointing fingers at Afghanistan and Iraq. But most of the attackers were already known to be Saudi. Bush ignores Saudi ties to the attacks and instead hunts for reasons to invade Iraq and continually presses the CIA for a link. Then they link Iraq's Hussein to bin Laden, but with no credible sources. Mainstream media perpetuates the Bush administration line that Hussein is guilty of the attacks by association. The US must war with Iraq and Afghanistan. The war on terror commences in the name of freedom and democracy. And what you need to keep in mind is that oil buys America a lot of cheap deals. It props up the US economy, and it's an excuse to print dollars to supply to those who want to buy oil. And what the United States government doesn't want citizens knowing is that in 2002, the petrodollar is dumped. Saddam Hussein's petro-euro is now in full swing. Almost. This essentially means that if Europe were to jump on board, the 1973 US-Saudi deal would be on shaky grounds. By March 2003, Bush announces war with Iraq after much media hype, and by June of 2003, Iraq's oil is suddenly trading under the petrodollar again. So what does this all mean? The rundown I just gave you is far from exhaustive and has taken weeks to compile. And it's the government's intention to make this complex. The words petrodollar system tends to make one's eyes glaze over, but if you're interested at all in the current international climate from Russia to Israel to China to Iran, Syria, the Middle East, or even North Korea, you need to inform yourself about the petrodollar. If the petrodollar failed tomorrow, the United States economy would most likely collapse. And hyperinflation would roll through this country like an unstoppable storm. Those who don't deal in US dollars have a good chance of economic survival, but superpowers would change and the world would be a different place. The United States would lose their global standing. It's the ultimate textbook fall of an empire.
Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went downstairs, I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. He pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I couldn't believe it would really be true, but that's actually what happened. These people took control of the policy in the United States. We can use our military in the region, in the Middle East, and the Soviets won't stop us. He said, and we've got about 5 or 10 years to clean up those old Soviet client regimes. Syria, Iran, Iraq, before the next great superpower comes on to challenge us. The purpose of the military is to start wars and change governments. It's not to sort of deter conflict. We're going to invade countries, and my mind was spinning. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. And that's why we're failing in Iraq, because Iran and Syria know about the plan.
So let me go back to what I said at the beginning of this video. If you think for 1 second that we lobbed $100 million worth of ammunition into Syria because we have a benevolent government who loves and cares about dead or suffering children in foreign lands, you need to take that dollar out of your pocket and realize that your entire way of life is about to change.
Exactly. And this is what I've been trying to tell people. Your dollar is an instrument of debt. It is an evidence of debt. It has no value. One cannot get rich accumulating debt. Think about it. All you're accumulating is IOUs. You've got so much in IOUs, and you say, okay, well, this becomes payable now. Okay? Who's going to pay you? Who owes you that? The United States, right? Because the dollar is an obligation of the United States. It's a debt obligation. So the United States has to pay you. Okay? See, the United States is in debt to everybody who carries their Federal Reserve notes. Okay? Who does the government owe? The people. The ones who have circulated those Federal Reserve notes, those evidences of debt. Okay? They owe us. They owe us. And everybody keeps asking the question, oh, who do they owe? Who are we what's going to happen when they pay it back? Well, we're all doomed. We're all doomed. It's going to be a catastrophe. You have to realize who do they owe? Who do they owe the money to? I mean, it all comes down to who did they take it from? Where did it come from? It all came from the confiscation of gold. Okay? And then, like the video says, or like the man said in the video, when silver was suspended, they said it was a good reason, but it was not a good reason. As a matter of fact, the reason why they told you, it should have clicked in your head. Well, wait a minute, the manipulators, we're going to take it out of the control of the manipulators? No, you put it totally in control of the manipulators. That's exactly what happened. You lied to the American people. They fell for it. They just sat there and went, oh okay. You know? And here's something else that kind of got me by the boo-boo here a couple days ago. I was listening to a video by a well-known journalist, calls himself a journalist, I'd say, and he decided to talk about this shooting thing and how the cops decided they weren't going to go in. And well, I do have to say that people do judge you by the way you talk. And I say that because Lionel just happened to, I don't know, insult a whole bunch of rebels because he decided to take his nonsense and throw in that Southern accent that he doesn't have. What he should have done was he should have done exactly what's going on, okay? And you say, well, geez, how come you didn't send a man in there? And you'd have your sheriff stand up and say, well, of the 4 men that we have, the only one who was really equipped for it decided he didn't want to go in. He, well, kind of cowered out on us. And the other 3 men, well, they were ill-equipped. They couldn't go in, so we had to wait for Coral Springs. It was, Jesus, a really sad thing, you know, and we did all we were capable of doing, but circumstances unforeseen, we just weren't equipped for it, you know. And you can get a real educated sounding response like that, and somebody will say, oh, okay, and they'll walk away. No, it doesn't work. Your department is charged with being prepared. If you only had 1 man prepared for it, I guess, then your department, your whole county department, is no good. You don't qualify to be a department. You're ill-equipped. This is bad management. And you brag that you did exemplary service for the community and that you did such great things for the department and this, that, and the other. But clearly, the actions that we saw are very contrary to what common sense tells us. Okay? But then again, I mean, consider the source. Okay? This Israel guy, is his last name, okay, he'd been a Republican, but he ran for office as a Democrat. He was first elected in sheriff in 2012 and then re-elected in 2016. That's according to the Sun-Sentinel, okay. Now, the outreach workers who mainly attend community events are, in addition to political activists and others, Israel hired into community affairs roles, writing and designing printed pieces about the agency and sharing it on social media. The employee log shows 6 hired into the community affairs roles, their salaries totaling $388,729. His opponents say he's built a publicly funded political machine, paying back supporters with jobs and using them to keep him in office. They say the money could be better spent, particularly after the sheriff complained about not having enough funding to secure the county courthouse, where a murder suspect recently escaped. Asked about the allegations, of course, he responded, "What have I done differently that Dan Shula or Abraham Lincoln or Martin Luther King, Gandhi?" He also said, "Lions don't care about the opinions of sheep." That's a paraphrase of a quote from the Game of Thrones character Tyrion Lannister, a villainous public administrator known for promoting his family's interests ahead of governments or the people's. Okay, yeah, we don't. Lions don't care about the opinions of sheep. Nah, you're nobody. You're insignificant. You're there, and well, this time you're kind of in the way, you know. And what happened is what I don't think they anticipated happening. They started boycotting the NRA, and then you've got Enterprise Rent-A-Car and FedEx, and well, actually FedEx and the 180, they spun around because they found out business was being extremely hurt for going against the NRA. The NRA has a big following, and there's a reason why there's a big following for the NRA. Okay? But, I mean, it all backfired because NRA membership is skyrocketing. Record numbers of firearms are being sold. Oh, and they even had a gun show. Okay, the record number of firearm enthusiasts made their way to that show at the State Florida Fairgrounds this weekend. Okay, organizers say almost 7,000 people attended Saturday, with Sunday's tally expected to be higher. Organizer Steve Fernandez said they'd never seen such a large crowd. However, it's possible that the cancellation of next month's show in Fort Lauderdale may have attracted concerned citizens. And of course, Fort Lauderdale being in Broward County, or Coward County, is that what it is? I think we've renamed it nowadays, right? But yeah, that could be why they canceled that little deal there. Okay. In Florida, you have to have supposedly you have to have a permit to carry a gun. Okay. And then after this little deal here, there was a sheriff, I guess, in Polk County, and he said, you know what, we're gonna have to train, or we're gonna have to let some of the teachers who have concealed carry weapons permits to go ahead and bring their weapons in with them, just in case. You know, if they're already concealed carry, that's wonderful. Okay, otherwise they're looking for more people, or were looking for more people who wanted to do that. But the thing is, even with a concealed carry weapons permit in the state of Florida, you have to have you have to be a deputy. You have to be deputized or some sort of law enforcement to be able to go on any campus armed. Okay, any school site at all. Can you see how many laws this guy followed, right? The school shooter, he followed all those laws, right? These laws are really going to matter, okay? Well, anyway, this Polk County sheriff, he says, you know what? Since that's the way it's going to be, I'll deputize them. Whatever. You know, I'll make sure that they understand exactly what's going on, and we'll qualify them to be deputies, and we'll deputize them. In Ohio, there was a man that says, you know what, we can't do this anymore. I'm calling on teachers who work in these districts. Give us a call. You know, anybody who wants to do the concealed carry weapons in their schools so that they can help protect their children, people who are qualified, contact me, he says. Within an hour, he had 100 contacts. Within 3 hours, he had 200. He had to cap it at 300. And say, okay, we've got enough. We have to stop now, okay? And they've got 300, and they're going to educate these people and put them in the schools where they need to be. In Texas, there is a sheriff's department in Texas, or several actually, that when Sandy Hook happened, they said they found out then, hey, we're not going to wait around. Government isn't going to take care of this. We need to take care of it. We have to do it at home. So what did they do? They did it at home or at the school. They created their own little school security, okay, and they know exactly who's who and what's what. And they did the with the security, it's all internal. It's been working for years. It works. It's been proven to work, and this guy's doing it. He has a good layout of what's going on. It's their own little part of their own little division of the school system. And I believe that there are some people who from various different states that are going to meet with him, explore his model, see how it works for him, and how they can make it work for them. This is a great thing. This is a very good thing. Okay. What we need are more people who are going to be there to respond when they're needed. okay? And which is where the sheriff's department failed. They failed miserably, okay? You're not going to be everywhere at once. And we know that. And there were a lot of errors. We know there were a lot of errors. But I believe they were purposeful errors, because if you put the pieces together, you'll also find that his district is Debbie Wasserman Schultz district. And if you're not familiar with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she was the Democratic National Committee organizer who got ousted from her position, basically for, corruption. Let's put it that way. We'll leave it at that. I think she had 3 different DNC leaders, and it was noted on Fox News on October 28th of 2016, before the election, that Hillary Clinton was under investigation. She was under investigation. But it didn't make it to mainstream news. Mainstream news, that is the problem. Well, Fox is mainstream. That's the only place to put it out. And what surprises me is Fox is getting some inside details. There are correspondents, journalists, if you will, opinion makers, whoever, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, all those people. There's a lot of them who have been getting inside information, and they know what's going on. They're just not at liberty to disclose anything or discuss anything. Unlike CNN and the New York Times and most of your other ones, which are leaking things which shouldn't be leaked anyway. And then you've got Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the popular ones, and Google searches. Okay, Google searches is cutting out natural news. They don't think natural news is mainstream enough for you. Okay, what you're listening to me right now, you're listening to me. They call what I'm doing fake news. Okay, even if I get it from a reputable source, they call it fake news. They, the establishment. Okay, and when they say, we want to get rid of fake news, that means they want to get rid of people like me and people like Michael Vera and Joe Long and Ira, and you know what I mean? They want to get rid of these guys because all you guys are fake news. We're not fake news, but we're not journalists either. We're not journalists. We're not paid shills. We're not going to get paid to push your agenda. And that's the thing. And they get it. They say, well, you've got people out there looking for truth. Okay? And they're doing it on their own. They're putting out their own shows. I know, FBI and Homeland Security here were listening to my show just to make sure that I didn't do anything wrong. Because if I did something wrong, okay? And guys, you're probably listening now. I love you. You guys are great. But we see where this is going. We can see it. Anytime you want to come and talk with me, come on. You know where my heart is, you know where my mind is, you know where everything is, what we've got going on here. Okay. I'm a man that craves truth. I want to know what the truth is. Okay. Like FBI's use of stalkerware, which can intercept Facebook messages, track GPS, and remotely activate phone microphone. Okay. Dozens of employees from United States federal law enforcement agencies and the armed forces have bought smartphone malware that can, in some cases, intercept Facebook messages, track GPS locations, and remotely activate a device's microphone, according to a large cache of data stolen by a hacker and obtained by Motherboard. Motherboard is a publication here. The news highlights the popularity of consumer spyware, not just among the general population, but also with members of the U.S. government. The spyware company in question is MobiStealth, which sells its product to monitor children and employees, but it has also marketed malware to spy on spouses suspected of having an affair. Okay? Some label the malware as spouseware or stalkerware. Users need to have physical access to the Android or jailbroken iPhone device to install the software. FBI and DHS declined to comment, of course, and the TSA did not provide a response in time for publication. None of the law enforcement or military MobiStealth customers responded to a request for comment. And it's difficult to determine why each user purchased malware from MobiStealth, but it may have been used in an official capacity for their job or to monitor their children, or maybe even use it illegally. You just never know, huh? Because the way things are today, I kind of don't trust too many people. Sit tight. We'll be back.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
The L&M Radio Network offers a chat room for you, the listener, to connect with others whom are interested in the topics and guests that the L&M Radio Network brings to you. During the live shows, the hosts will even visit the chat room and chat with you, the listener. Click on the big red Chat and Listen button at the top of the website and join us. No subscription is needed at either lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
here come the plugs. bensound.com. The music is coming from bensound.com. Got to put the plug in there. Also, we're broadcasting, coming to you at lnmradionetwork.com. You can chat and listen there. LateNightInTheMidlands.com. You can chat and listen there also. OpenEyesNetwork.com. You can listen there. We have radio apps on TuneIn Radio and also the Paranormal Radio app. And we're at 101.7 FM, Columbia Talk. My goodness. And before the break, I was talking about spyware and social media and things like that, how Twitter and Facebook and well, YouTube, everybody's getting cut. Ask Michael Vera. Everybody's getting cut. The views are down. People aren't listening anymore. It's crazy. A lot of listeners, subscribers are going away. They're gone. I don't know. But I did break down, and I provide copies of this on YouTube at What's Out There is the YouTube channel. And, of course, they're made available after the live show. But today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2018. My brother passed away 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. He would have been, well, he was born on February 29th. He was a leap year guy, but anyway. He was born in 1948, so he would have been probably 70 this year, right? So, anyway, getting back to what's going on. Who are they? They are Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. For some reason, they think that people like me, we're fake news. Okay, we don't have journalist degrees. We're not journalists or anything like that. So we're fake news. Okay, the truth is that you're probably going to get some pretty good stuff from places like, I don't know, Zero Hedge or Free Thought Project or Judicial Watch or InfoWars is okay. Be careful with InfoWars. You might, like I say, anything that I tell you or anyone else tells you, don't just jump on it and say it's true. Kind of do the research. Let the brain cells spark, take a good look at it and make sure that it makes sense to you. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, well, it might not make sense. It has to be, and it's not about your truth, okay? It's not your truth or my truth. The truth is the truth. There's no such thing as your truth, and there's no such thing as my truth, okay? It is the truth, and that's it. Some people were talking about Putin, the NWO puppet, right? Well, it seems as though Russia is calling for an elimination of the Khazarian Mafia world order. Okay, and I'm getting this from Covert Geopolitics at geopolitics.com. But speaking at the Munich Security Conference, we are told that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called Saturday for an end to a world order dominated by the West and said Moscow wanted to establish a pragmatic relationship with the United States. This is by Jonas Alexis. Certainly a devastating blow to the New World Order, that's for sure, and their agents like John McCain and all those neoconservatives who never get tired of drinking other people's blood in the Middle East and elsewhere. And this is just the beginning. Lavrov said that the time the West called the shots, well, the time when the West called the shots is over. Dismissing NATO as a relic of the Cold War, and it is, pretty much. He added, I hope that the world will choose a democratic world order, a post-West one, in which each country is defined by its sovereignty, Lavrov said. He also said Moscow wanted to build relations with Washington, which would be pragmatic with mutual respect and acknowledgement for our responsibility and global stability. Lavrov, whether he notices or not, is asking for the return of practical reason in the political firmament. His plea is certainly congruent with what Kant would call the categorical imperative, which seeks universal principles. As I have argued in the past, the categorical imperative prohibits contradiction and irrationality precisely because it's based on the moral law itself. It states, act only according to that maxim by which you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. Act only according to that maxim by which you can, at the same time that will and should become a universal law. See, I guess it depends on how you say it. That makes sense. This obviously throws the NWO ideology out the window because the New World Order itself can't be universalized, okay? New World Order agents continue to destroy one country after the other with no moral principle whatsoever, as you can tell by looking around here, right, at the U.S. What's so astonishing to much of the world is that New World Order agents see nothing wrong in obliterating men, women, and children. They have absolutely no remorse, okay? And look what's happening in the Middle East. Oh, just lob a few in there, kill 170,000 people, or, a couple million people. Is it worth the price? Well, we think it's worth the price, said Dianne Feinstein. Seriously, you think it? I'm not Feinstein. It was another woman. Forgive me, it was the wrong name. But, it's worth it. It's worth it. Seriously. And now, is it worth it when these people come over here, these migrants come over here, and they start killing your people in the streets, okay, because they want to come here and leech off us, okay? There's a whole thing in the, in the tax laws. They've got ways around it. They've got many ways around it, okay? As a matter of fact, 3 years and forget it. They're pretty much taking all kinds of stuff. And even the IRS goes along with the fact, hey, a little bit of fraud with a Social Security number, it doesn't belong to you, it's no big deal. We're not going to worry about it, okay? A little bit of Social Security fraud like that, we're not going to worry about it. Why? Because, I don't know, it's pretty messed up. It's pretty messed up. So, anyway, this man says, sorry we have to use your country, Iraqis, but you let Saddam come to power, and we're still going to instill democracy in your country. To instill democracy, men, women, and children have to die. Mothers have to mourn for their babies, and fathers have to dislocate. This democracy is basically hell on earth. Ann Coulter, and her bosses continued to live in a dream world where practical reason plays no role. That seems to be far-fetched. Perhaps it's pertinent to bring in flaming Jewish neocon Michael Ledeen. Anyway, creative destruction is our middle name, both within society and abroad. We tear down the old order every day, from business to science, literature, art, architecture, and cinema to politics and law. Our enemies have always hated this whirlwind of energy and creativity which menaces their traditions, whatever they may be, and shames them for their inability to keep peace. We must destroy them to advance our historic mission. As it turns out, the New World Order, which the Khazarian Mafia and their lackeys have established over the years, is not based on the pursuit of truth or moral principles, but on the pursuit of categorical lies, colossal hoaxes, deceptive means, and complete fabrications. Satan, the father of lies, right? You remember how the New World Order agents led the American people into Iraq? Remember how they led the sheeple into Afghanistan and Libya? Remember how they wanted to do the same thing in Syria? You see, no one can universalize the New World Order ideology because it's basically incoherent. Fundamentally incoherent. The moral or universal law, says Kant, is what binds us all together as rational creatures. Any deviation from the moral law is a recipe for disaster. So, any system that seeks to dismiss the moral law must be precisely because that system will inevitably be incoherent and metaphysically worthless. He continues to say that for an action to be good, It is not enough that it should conform to the moral law. It must also be done for the sake of the moral law. Okay? Again, McCann again kills the New York Order ideology here. If you think that he's off the mark, listen to flaming neocon John Bolton. He says, it's a big mistake for us to grant any validity to international law, because over the long term, the goal of those who think it really means anything are those who want to construct or constrict the United States. What Bolton ended up saying is that international law and New World Order ideology are incompatible. In order for one to exist, the other must be supplanted. But Bolton didn't stop here. He moved on to declare explicitly that he wants to make the case for secrecy and get this, deception. As if I had to say something I knew it was false to preserve national security, okay, I would do it, he said. In other words, people like Bolton are paid to lie to the American people. They're Satanists. Satanists, okay? It's unreal. Who's established a New World Order ideology around the world? Who's behind the perpetual wars in Iraq and elsewhere? We talked about this at the beginning of the show, right? Who's behind massive illegal immigration in America and even Europe? The answer is the Khazarian Mafia. You've got the Khazarian Mafia, which comes back to the Bolshevik Revolution. Stalin, Lenin, all those. Yes, it migrated. I hate to say it because there's so much controversy going here, but it migrated to a place we call Israel. There are some bad people there. Not all. There are some very good people there. But there are some bad people. It's just the way it is. Oh my. How do you do it? How do we do it, huh? There are a lot of things. We've got a FISA memo. We're in the middle of a coup, okay? And this NWO thing, this New World Order thing, is coming down, and everybody says, oh, Putin is a puppet of the New World Order. Well, we just found out Putin's not a puppet. Russia is totally against the idea, okay? So now, let's get to the Trump end of it. Trump is the NWO guy, right? Okay. Well, he's against it too. He must be, because, I mean, we've got so much going on with the Democratic Party. We've got sociopaths who are lying to us. Remember, the father of lies, okay? And they're doing it with this FISA memo. And even over a year after this man has been elected into office, he's done more for this country than any of his predecessors, any of them. Even being obstructed, the man gets through many obstructions. I don't know how he does it, but with all the distractions going on, he has still managed to accomplish more than any other president in the past in this short amount of time. And do you think he's done? No, he's not done. Of course he's not done. He's just got started. He's got a long way to go. He's got 100 years of undoing to do. Over 100 years. Or pretty near 100 years of undoing. It's all got to be turned around. It comes back to, well, it all comes back to the money, to the banks. Okay, because that is what they use to control. Remember the petrodollar and then the euro dollar, and it's all about the dollar, the debt note. Okay, the thing is, they don't want to tie it to the dollar, to gold. I mean, because if you tie it to gold, you have to use gold to pay it back. They've got to pay that money back. They've got to do it in gold and silver. And if you tie gold and silver back to it, they'll say, wait a minute, we can't. How are we supposed to pay you what we owe you from what we printed up? Because we took that as collateral, because, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, we can't do that. So how do you do it? How do you get rid of the World Bank? How do you get rid of the bankers? Do you, well, here's the beginning. Trump did it with an executive order that froze all the assets of the people and prevented any dealing with those who were committing crimes against humanity. Okay? Well, there's your start. Well, you can't access it. Okay, well, what good is it? It's useless. Well, it was useless to begin with. Okay, well, what about the gold? How about the gold I've got? What about it? Are you going to sell it for those useless paper? For that useless paper? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Because the money isn't backed by it anymore. Now it's backed by oil. How much oil do you have? It depends on which association you go through, huh? Because open society or change. We Are Change. We Are Change is George Soros, which you remember Acorn. Acorn was all together by Soros. You notice you don't hear Acorn anymore. They adapted a new name, or adopted a new name. They're still the same people. They're just doing things a little bit differently, that's all. But they're doing the same things. They're registering dead people. They're registering illegal voters. There are more people registered to vote than there are residents. And if you notice, there was 100,000 more people in one county in California, voters, registered voters, than there were people. This is crazy. And if you're worried about these people, like Google Maps or anything like that, you know how Google Maps likes their street view, and they'll shine that sucker right in your driveway? Well, many people don't realize it, but Google has these cars driving around the country taking street view pictures of their homes, and they put them on Google Maps, okay? And it's a little bit concerning because these pictures can show strangers a great deal about your home, especially if your garage door was open at the time those pictures were taken, right? You think about it. You go into Street View and you look in someone's garage and it's like, well, now you're a target. So, and if you're like me and a lot of other people, your privacy is important to you. You're going to want to check out this one. This here will tell you how to get your property, how to hide it from Google Maps. Okay? So what you do is you go into your the bad news is there's no way to keep the address off Google Maps. That's no problem, okay? But the good news is you can get Google to blur out your property so that Google Maps users won't be able to see it. And here's what you do. You go to the Google Maps and you type in your address. You bring up the street view of your property. Look to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You'll see an icon labeled Report a Problem. You click on that, Report a Problem, and you'll get a page labeled Report Inappropriate Street View. Okay? Adjust the image so your house is inside that red box. Fill out the form. Type the verification code at the bottom of the page into the box provided and click Submit. Check back in a few days to see that the image has been blurred. Okay? You can also get license plates and faces blurred. For example, if you want a picture of your business on Google Maps, but you don't want the license plate number of your vehicle in front of you on Google, you can get that blurred. You can also get your car blurred out as well if you want. Okay? Google wants to report license plate numbers and faces that aren't blurred out, so they can blur them out. Okay? And the process does seem to work, and of course it's free. Okay? The amount of information Google collects through Google Maps and posts online is quite a lot. It might even be frightening, but not every address is included in the Street View. Addresses in many rural areas are not on the Street View, although chances are your home is on it if you live in a suburban or an urban area. Okay, so if you're worried about that, go back to the replay. Catch us on YouTube. Go to the replay there, and it'll go right over it again and tell you exactly how to do that. Okay. Senator calls out Big Pharma for opposing legal marijuana. A prominent Democratic United States senator is slamming pharmaceutical companies for opposing marijuana legislation. She says, to them, Kirsten Gillibrand, believe it or not, Gillibrand, however you say it, of New York, To them, it's not competition for chronic pain. That's outrageous, because we don't have the crisis in people who are taking marijuana for chronic pain having overdose issues, she says. It's not the same thing. Not as highly addictive as opioids are. She's absolutely right. She says on a federal level, we really need to say that it is a legal drug. You can access it if you need it. Okay, she says, I don't see it as a gateway to opioids. What I see is the opioid industry and the drug companies that manufacture it. Some of them in particular are just trying to sell more drugs that addict patients and addict people across the country. Legislation advocates have long speculated that Big Pharma is working behind the scenes to maintain cannabis prohibition. And in 2016, Insys Therapeutics, which makes products containing fentanyl and other opioids, as well as synthetic version of the cannabinoid THC, donated $500,000 to help defeat a marijuana legalization measure that appeared on Arizona's ballot last year. Okay, so Big Pharma is against this, and there's a reason why. They are getting people hooked on opioids. Okay, it's the drug companies are doing it. They'll bring you in, they'll get you hooked on the painkillers, and next thing you know, you can't get off them. And then when they try to go for rehabilitation, it's tough. You have to be you have to be a welfare recipient. That's probably the only way you're ever going to get this stuff. And you have to go for your doses of what do they call it? I used to take them every day when I was a driver for the health place, for Community Concepts, and they go and they don't reduce this stuff. Okay, they don't reduce it at all. If you want to wean off it, you have to do it yourself. Okay, little at a time. The state isn't out to help anybody. They want to make you dependent as possible. But things are changing. Zero Hedge, very good place to get news. They report lawyers for the DNC argue that primary rigging is protected by the First Amendment. You believe that? The document provided by the law offices of the attorneys for the plaintiffs in the case, Jared and Elizabeth Beck, appears to argue that if the Democratic Party did cheat Sanders in the 2016 presidential primary race, then that action was protected under the First Amendment. Really? The defense also argued that because Jared Beck's outspoken Twitter posts and the plaintiffs were using the litigation process for political purposes. For example, the plaintiff's counsel, Jared Beck, repeatedly refers to the DNC as shitebags on Twitter and uses other degrading language in reference to the defendants. Fascinatingly, no mention is made regarding the importance of the First Amendment at that point in the document. But the defense also took issue with Jared Beck for what they termed as repeatedly promoted patently false and deeply offensive conspiracy theories about the deaths of former DNC staffer and plaintiff's process server in an attempt to bolster attention for this lawsuit. Remember Seth Rich? Yeah, this author was shocked to find that despite the characterizations of Beck's as peddlers of conspiracy theory, the defense counsel failed to mention the motion for protection filed by the Becks earlier in the litigation process. They also failed to notice the voice-modulated phone calls received by law offices of the Becks, which contained a caller ID corresponding to the law offices of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Oh, there's no conspiracy theory there, right? Well, the DNC defense lawyers then argued that there's no legitimate basis for this litigation, which is, at its most basic, an improper attempt to forge the federal courts into a political weapon to be used by individuals who are unhappy with how a political party selected its candidate in a presidential campaign. And then it continued to recognize any of the causes of action the plaintiffs alleged based on their animating theory would run directly contrary to the long-standing Supreme Court precedent recognizing the central and critical First Amendment rights enjoyed by political parties, especially when it comes to selecting the party's nominee for public office. What a bunch of hypocrisy. And then they go down and they argue, the DNC is arguing for its right to appoint candidates at its own discretion while simultaneously denying any fiduciary duty to represent the voters who donated to the Democratic Party. Hello, they put funds into this thing. Fiduciary, do you know what fiduciary means? Hello, anybody? Fiduciary is a financial responsibility. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable how dense these people are. I don't get it. February 27th. That, my friends, is what's out there.
Well, we need to know a couple of things. Number one, we need to know how the world's premier law enforcement agency managed to lose 5 months worth of text. And what's also troubling is in the text we do have, they're discussing how to avoid text being captured and secured. So what's missing is important, but also what's there is important. It is manifest bias, not just against Trump, but against his kids, against his business interests. There's a text where they hope the Trump hotel fails. That is a level of bias that you rarely see and you never see from law enforcement officers. What's also troubling to me is this text that Johnny Ratcliffe found last night about this secret society. Now, I have no clue what that means because that was not the phraseology I used, but it's the day after the election, and it's the same two people that we're discussing a little bit later in the text, the damage they had done with the Clinton investigation and how they could, quote, fix it and make it right.
What's out there?